Welcome to the Rev and the Rav, a program of interreligious dialogue and discovery sponsored by Andover Newton Theological School and Hebrew College here in Newton, Massachusetts.
My name is Reverend Nick Carter.
My name is Rabbi Danny Lehmann.
We welcome you to our program today. Today's program, we're really focused a little bit more personally than we are topical. We want to get to know each other a little bit as sort of a core level of understanding and discovery. Danny, Rabbi Danny Lehmann, did you always grow up wanting to be a rabbi?
Not always. I had dreams of being a neurosurgeon, but that sort of went out the window after my freshman year of biology in college. But I actually grew up in the conservative movement in a small congregation outside of Syracuse, New York, and was very involved in the youth group and the youth movement. And found myself attracted to the Orthodox community in the latter part of my high school career because of the intensity and the religious commitment that I found there, which was resonant with sort of where I was at that time. I ended up going to an Orthodox yeshiva, rabbinical studies program in Israel after high school, and then attended Yeshiva University, which is the flagship institution of modern Orthodoxy in the United States. And I think it was there at Yeshiva University where a lot of the professors were rabbis and they were role models that I decided that that was my calling. I actually served as the cantor and rabbi of a small congregation in North Syracuse when I was in high school.
Really?
They were without a rabbi. On the high holidays, several years in a row, I would go and lead services. So I had a sense of what that was like and that I might be good at it and enjoy it, but it wasn't until
there's
college.
There's some questions immediately that come up, I guess. The first is the difference between conservative and Orthodox, and you use the word movement and community. Sometimes Christians use the word denominations. There are 3 or 4 of them in Judaism. Can you help me discern the difference between them? Is there an easy way to do that?
I'm not sure there's an easy way to do it, but in general, you have the Reform movement. We also use the word denomination, but more typically movement, which is really the earliest organized movement in the United States. It has the first rabbinical seminary in the United States, and is now the largest religious movement among Jews in the United States, the Reform. And it's places a great emphasis on autonomy, tends to focus on individual religious experience, on a strong relationship to modern society, to social justice, and has characterized itself as open to interfaith families and taking more liberal stances on a whole range of religious political issues. And the conservative movement tends to straddle the middle. Their motto has been tradition and change, so trying to exist within traditional Jewish norms and legal structures, but trying to be flexible with regard to how they engage modernity in modern society. And then the Orthodox is the most traditional and tends to, both on theological and on practice issues, revere the past and try to manage to maintain those traditions even within a modern setting. The 4th movement is the Reconstructionist movement. It's really the only one that has its deepest roots in America. It's really an American movement. It really focused on reinterpreting, reconstructing the notion of God for modernity, dealing with the concept of chosenness and being uncomfortable with the concept of chosenness, much more democratic in its religious processes and communal structure. It's the smallest of the movements, but in many ways the most reflective of America. And Nick, your American Baptist roots and
it's an interesting story. I certainly, amongst my family and friends, would have to be ranked as the most unlikely choice for minister, even though my grandfather was a Baptist minister. My uncle was a Baptist minister. My father worked at the Baptist headquarters. Everyone on my father's family is Baptist. Everyone on my mother's side is Baptist.
Purebred.
Of a sort. But I had pretty good credentials as a scoundrel. Even though church was a central part of our family life. And we loved being in church. For me, church was fun. And even though when I went off to college, I thought I would be an aerospace engineer, or I actually thought about for a while being a medical illustrator. I really enjoyed drawing and painting and thought maybe that's where it was. But once I graduated from college, I actually started teaching and fell in love with a woman that I'd known since I was about 3 years old. And she had a profound influence on me in my thinking. And we made a decision as we were getting married to live lives of commitment and service. And that we'd spent many years talking about what we were going to do with our lives. And the opportunity presented itself for us to go to seminary under what was called the Rockefeller Plan, where the Rockefeller family made it possible for you to go and try seminary with all expenses paid for a year. And we both went, and we decided to go to the same school that Martin Luther King went to, because he was a hero of both of us, and our families had known him. I had met him as a teenager, and Debbie's family was really close to the King family, and it led us to what was then Colgate Rochester Crozier Seminary in Rochester, New York. And while I was there, I really had something of a conversion, not only in terms of a calling to a life of service, but a deep spiritual change in my life, particularly as it relates to my understanding of the Bible, which is another whole story. So I went on and made the decision to be ordained, as my wife did. My wife was, I was ordained on a Friday night, and she was ordained on a Saturday night.
Was there any question that it would be a Baptist?
No,
ordination?
It was, for us at that point, it was absolutely Baptist.
And what would you say are some of the unique characteristics of the American Baptist tradition?
Baptist, if you look at the whole spectrum of Christianity, with Roman Catholicism at one end, and perhaps Quakers and the Amish at the other end, the peace churches, Baptists are much more towards the end of the spectrum that includes the Quakers and the Amish and many of those peace churches. Baptists are fiercely independent. If you go to a Christian church, in some cases, you go to a church, like if you went to a Roman Catholic church, chances are the worship service would be always the same, no matter what church you went into. With a Baptist church, almost every church service is different. Because Baptists put a great deal of emphasis on the independence of the local church, what they call soul freedom, the uninterpreted experience of the Holy Spirit. Baptists are known for the belief, some good traditional Protestant beliefs in the priesthood of all believers, and also in the regeneration of the Spirit, which in sort of popular language is called being born again. Although within the Baptist family itself, using the word Baptist is sort of like saying vegetable. That you can probably find 15 or 20 different types of Baptists, and you have to always qualify it. And there are many jokes about Baptists, finding a friend who's a Baptist and then saying what type of Baptist, and asking 4 or 5 times what type of Baptist, and then finally, after 20 minutes of how many types of Baptists you are, you finally decide that you hate each other.
That's interesting, because I'm a part of a group of people who identified with Orthodoxy in our formative religious development, but as we got older, found some of the ways of thinking and structures of Orthodox religious life problematic and have drifted but have not found a alternative home within a denominational or movement setting. And so we're kind of betwixt and between, and there's a whole group of us, and wherever I go, I kind of identify with those people who've had this Orthodox background and experience, but whether it's on issues of women's roles and participation or on issues of relationships with non-Jews and the secular, modern critical study of Jewish sources, all these kinds of issues define us as somewhere floating in this universe between the movements. And so even though I have an Orthodox training and ordination, like other people, I sort of find myself floating among a variety of different kind of religious communities.
You know, it's a great observation, particularly that I think for more and more people these days, denominational identity is dropping.
Right.
And that all of us are on let's say an authentic religious journey to find some expression of what we believe. And heretofore, we've been offered sort of a fixed group of denominations to do that.
Right.
And one of the exciting things about religious life in America right now is that we're finding other ways to do that. I mean, one of my confessions is, and my parents and grandparents would probably turn over in their grave, that I'm currently the member of the United Church of Christ. And I'm a trustee and a member of the Church Council of Old South Church in downtown Boston. But for me, at this point in my life, it's the right church family.
Right.
Now, you cut me, I bleed Baptist, and I had to tell my minister that, you know, even as I joined the UCC church. But I'm at home in that congregation. It's the right congregation for me.
Yeah, in the Jewish community, we're talking a lot now about a post-denominational Judaism, especially as we go further into this 21st century, and that the denominational structures that many of us grew up with are really 20th century phenomena, and that we're now moving into a period in which there's a lot more travel and movement and permeability between these different ways of constructing religious community and Jewish community in particular, and I think there's going to be a lot of creativity and opportunities for innovation. You know,
it's interesting. I think about where this discussion is led, but both of us are presidents of religious institutions, and we're finding an enormous diversity in our student bodies. Here at Andover Newton, we probably have 30, 35 different denominations present, and I know you have a wide variety. And Hebrew College has really been on the forefront of something. I think one of your predecessors described it to me. I used the word post-denominational with him, and he said, no, it's really trans-denominational.
Right.
What's going on at Hebrew College?
Well, I would actually say in some ways it's more post-denominational than trans-denominational, in the sense that even though our graduates will often take positions within denominational congregations or institutions, I think the training that they're getting and the formation that's taking place religiously isn't just about learning, here are the different denominations and we can kind of move between them, but how can we actually take from these different ways of thinking about Judaism and be creative and think about them beyond the current denominational structures. I don't think that means that the denominations are over and are necessarily coming to an end, but I do think that we're attracting people who want to think kind of beyond those categories at the same time that they're deriving all kind of learning from what has been generated and continues to be generated by those movements.
Yeah, but to come back to where we started, you would still describe yourself as an Orthodox Jew.
Not really.
Really?
Not really.
Is there a term that you can use?
No, and that's a problem, but that's the reality of my current religious life. I'm a member of an Orthodox synagogue. I certainly, in terms of my religious practice, have a great deal in common with what would be typical for Orthodox Jews, although on certain issues, with regard to, for instance, praying in a setting which is more egalitarian, more men and women mixed and equal, I have a preference for that, even though I don't find that in my Orthodox congregation. And when people ask me what kind of rabbi are you, I usually say, well, I was trained and ordained at an Orthodox rabbinical school, but currently I'm a pluralistic Jew.
Pluralistic Jew. Well, now, to what degree are you the exception, or are you sort of, do you think you're hip deep in the mainstream, or?
Well, I'm not sure I'm an exception, because there are certainly other people who are in similar positions. I wouldn't say that most of my colleagues who graduated from rabbinical school where I attended are floating in the same direction as I am. I mean, most of them maintain that commitment to the Orthodox structures and institutions. But because I grew up outside of the Orthodox movement and the conservative movement, and even during rabbinical school was involved in all kinds of interreligious and interdenominational stuff, I don't think anybody who remembers me from rabbinical school is particularly surprised that I've gone off that straight and narrow path.
That's great. Well, we want to thank you for listening in on our conversation today. It's fun as Danny and I get the chance to know each other better, and we will continue to explore topics both of the religious calendar, but deep theological themes, and maybe some lighter things as we go along. So thank you for being with us. I'm Reverend Nick Carter.
I'm Rabbi Danny Lehmann.
Peace.
Shalom.